Welcome back to Robinson Ventures Radio, where ingenuity meets innovation. Last we spoke, I was talking with Cian Robinson, CEO and president of Robinson Ventures, about his history in the healthcare industry as a problem solver and how culture can impact the ability to solve a problem. Let's listen some more.
And so I spent 13 months there, and respectfully, that health system wasn't ready for innovation. They thought they were. There was a CEO transition. The longtime CEO who retired, he thought the organization needed it and was ready for it. The new CEO wasn't convinced. But what really came up was the fact that health system's patient satisfaction scores, quality scores, employee satisfaction scores, it was just in such shambles. And no matter how much you want to innovate, you can't innovate your way out of a broken core of an organization. And that was the conversation I had with the CEO just before leaving, which was, hey, look, um, you know, your core's broken. You need to fix your core. You need to get yourself squared away. If your foundation's poor in your house, the rest of your house is also going to be poor. That was also the confluence of, I had a lot of folks when we moved to South Carolina were asking me to do stuff for them. Hey, do you think you can take this project on? Hey, do you think you can take that project on? And in fact, it was two companies from Lafayette, Louisiana, who were raising their hand, and that one was Lafayette General. When I left as an employee, they said, "Hey, can we buy up to 5 hours a week for you to continue to help us manage the projects you had on, so we have a nice transition." And what was great was one of the guys I was working with so closely internally, a guy named Mike Dozier, who at the time was the senior vice president and CIO, was really a swimming buddy in a lot of the innovation stuff we were doing inside Lafayette General. He became the guy who took on innovation, and so he and I, through that contract, got to interact on a fairly regular basis. When I left the health system here in South Carolina, he called me up, and a couple other folks called me up and said, "Hey, we want to take your contract from X number of hours a week to Y number of hours a week," literally from, I believe, a maximum of 5 to a maximum of 20. And so that was the opportunity to really re-engage and restart Robinson Ventures now that my non-compete had run out in 2020. There was a base client on which to start the work. In addition, another now client of Robinson Ventures, Acadian companies, raised their hand and said, "We're really interested in what corporate venture and innovation looks like." And so they became another base client. And then Tucker, what I'm really proud of is this was all of November of last year. So November of 2021. It's now July of 2022. And we have Auctioner as a client. We have Acadian companies as a client. We have the American Medical Association and their arm, Health 2047, as a client. Beacon Community Connections, which is a non-for-profit social determinants of health company that I helped start in Lafayette, Louisiana, with just a wonderful CEO, Dr. Holly Howitt. They're a client because they're thinking through their future as an entity. Insight Optics, a wonderful startup that's solving the diagnosis of diabetic and hypertensive retinopathy. I mean, helping them. Renal Care 360, a new way to identify, proactively treat chronic kidney disease. Hope Health, FQHC here in South Carolina. Just a wonderful group of senior executives there that I've just started to engage with. As you can hear, those are all primarily healthcare, but we do have an outlier, and it's a good outlier. It's a company called Secure Futures, and what they do is they are solar development. They focus on K-12, higher ed, healthcare, and municipal governments. And they tapped us on the shoulder and asked us to open up the South Carolina marketplace. The interesting part is if you go on our website, you will see that Secure Futures is a portfolio company of ours, right? We invested in Secure Futures almost a full decade ago, right? And have stuck with them in between helping them with, when we were in Virginia, we had the hiatus in Louisiana, but now Robinson Ventures is back, and we're in South Carolina, and we're helping them. We, in addition to be Robinson Ventures providing these different services, and that's innovation, investment, strategy, development, and we still offer non-for-profit consulting services. We equity invest, and we've invested in multiple companies since 2002. I'm very proud of 360 Professional Services Group. They have been the longest of our portfolio companies when we started and helped them form themselves in 2002. We invested in Hamper back in 2021 and a company called Think Genetic in 2021. Hamper is Think Gig Laundry Services, a laundry service that provides laundry pickup and delivery all around a membership model and a marketplace creation. Think Genetic goes and helps people who may think they have a rare genetic condition, really walk them through the process of determining if they may or may not have it, and then provide them the resources that they can go talk to and connect to receive the appropriate testing to confirm or deny. And if tested and it's confirmed, either treatment or drug trial. They're also working in the healthcare space by ingesting enterprise health record data, that's patient data, into their system to do some proactive identification. We invested in a neat company called Biomodem, and they're helping folks who have mobility issues. And it is AI, ML powered robotic systems for people who perhaps have, different mobility challenges, and helps physical therapists, doctors. And then we work through an organization called Venture South. They're one of the nation's largest angel networks and particularly focus in the Southeast. And so through them, we've invested in four companies: Gradient Health, Member Hub, Biospatial, and MP Cloud Technologies. So we truly live up to what we try to do, Tucker, which is, we try to deliver results with excellence and integrity. We do it in innovation, investment, strategy, and development. And we not only try to solve the problems or make the investment, but we stick around to try and make sure that it's successful. And does it happen 100% of the time? No. But I do think that we give them a little bit more of a chance, help them reduce their risk and continue to move forward.
Sort of backtracking. So what would you say prompted you to revamp Robinson Ventures? Was it your time working as an employee and not via contract in the health systems and seeing everything that there is to offer there? Or was it just the bit of a break you took when you moved from Louisiana to South Carolina that really got you thinking about Robinson Ventures again?
What got me thinking about Robinson Ventures again was the move out of Lafayette General and into the health system in South Carolina. And what it was, Tucker, was they were hiring me to solve a problem. It was yet again the model I had encountered decades before, where I would be hired, and 18 to 24 months later, I'd be hired into a new job or move into another company would hire me. And I sat there and I went, you know what? I don't want to do that. I'm at the stage of life where I can really think through how to do this again. And so that's why Robinson Ventures became attractive, which is I probably could have been a really good consultant to this healthcare system and have provided them value, but not have had to stay inside a culture that wasn't conducive to the movement that is needed in innovation to continue to advance healthcare and healthcare delivery. That's part of it. So it was very familiar. It was the same thing that happened before. But over the time of running Robinson Ventures the first time, and then working in research in a Carnegie class R1 research institution and a billion-dollar health system that got merged into a multiple billion-dollar health system, right? There's some unique skill sets there. And there's probably only a few dozen folks in the nation who have had that specific experience. And so immediately to me, looking at the marketplace and where health systems were trying to go, and the fact that, based on today's date of the 21st, this morning, Amazon announced it was acquiring a network of primary care offices for nearly $4 billion. And what that means is these non-traditional entrants into healthcare are coming into healthcare because they think they can run that ambulatory model way better. What does that mean for hospital systems, and how do they think that through? What does that mean for FQHCs? Heck, what does that mean for the local primary care, right, person? What does that mean? Like, okay, Amazon's in. Now we know Walmart has Walmart Health. Walgreens is moving that. What does it mean for that ambulatory environment? And then likewise, South Carolina is going through a really interesting cathartic process with this. It's a hyper-technical term called certificate of need. It's a process that some states have that you have to apply to in order to determine that, yes, there are the services in demand for the services you want to offer in that footprint. And so in South Carolina, if you want to open a physical therapy office, you have to go through that process. If you want to be a home health agency, you have to go through the process. You want, especially a hospital system wants to build a new hospital. And then what's also hyper specific to South Carolina is we're one of the fastest growing marketplaces in the nation. We probably have top 20 locations, 2 top 10, and probably 1 top 5. And that will be Charleston, Greenville, Spartanburg, and Myrtle Beach. And so with this certificate of need legislation, which is seeking to repeal it, all of a sudden, if that goes away, no longer is that a barrier to entry. And so folks who are interested in opening up primary care offices like the Amazons of the world, who have more cash on their balance sheet than probably all the health systems in the United States combined gross revenue, can enter in there and enter in there aggressively and do it in such a way that they understand, because they operate on the thinnest of margins, how to deliver healthcare in that fashion and yet do it with high quality and technologically enabled. And so when I saw the combination of, man, I felt this before, I was hired to solve a problem. And then everything that I had learned over the past 20 plus years, man, it was this confluence. And that's why we have the client base that we have today. And to be honest with you, we're still growing. I'm finishing up month 8 of restarting Robinson Ventures. And I think by finishing out calendar year 2022 and getting a full fiscal and calendar year balance sheet and revenue under my belt, I mean, it feels to me like if we continue down this path and continue adding clients, we're going to continue the growth, much like we did before, which is we were me as the only FTE and a series of 7 1099 contractors who were all aligned and delivering services. And I'm thinking this time around, we may get beyond 1099 and into W2, but only when the economics prove that out will we get there.
You've mentioned previously a bit of your clients, but talk about what draws you specifically to innovation and healthcare, as that does seem to be the primary subsect of clients.
It's pretty personal, honestly, Tucker, and I don't know if you've ever heard this story, but this is before Dr. Harder, this is before you and Rory. I was my first year at Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh, and your great grandmother, still alive, she was in her early 80s, and I got a call, and I believe it was February of 92, from my mom, who was still living in New Jersey, that grandma, great grandma for you, was in the hospital and had a heart attack. Now, what you need to know, this wasn't her first heart attack. She was diabetic. She was overweight. She lived primarily on a small pension from your great grandfather and Social Security, and qualified for government programs. And when I got there, it was pretty clear it was bad. And I knew enough at the time that I can hear about her heart functions, and her heart functions were not strong. And your great grandma was not a very huggy woman. She's pretty direct and told you she loved you in a whole bunch of different ways, right? Always made sure you were fed, everything was clean. If you were going out with the cousins, you had a little bit of money in your pocket. Whatever she had in her pocket would go in your pocket, usually a couple dollars, $5 at the max. During breaks at college, I would come stay with her, right? That type of stuff. And she made me give her a hug. And I'm like, okay, like, before you leave, give me a hug. I go out in the hallway, and the physicians and the nurses were talking about her as if she were already dead. And I sort of sat there and listened to them and how they were going to free the bed up because this 82-year-old woman was taking it up. I was pretty emotional at that point in time, and I let my anger get the best of me, and I confronted them. And thank God for your great Uncle Carmen, who was coming up the hallway, who separated me from them. And I'm like, Uncle Carmen, they're talking about her as if she's dead. And he's like, Cian, like, look, it's getting bad outside. Go home. Go back to Pittsburgh. It's getting icy. We'll call you in the morning. Well, the phone call I got in the morning was that my grandmother had passed away. And I knew right then and there that I was going to do something in healthcare, because I'll be damned if an 82-year-old woman shouldn't have proper healthcare. She had out of control diabetes. She was in congestive heart failure before the heart attack. There were so many chronic conditions that could have been managed appropriately that weren't. No matter the amount of health money we're spending on healthcare, no matter what we're doing technologically, our health system fails folks like your great grandmother, who was on a small pension, on Social Security, and on different government supported programs. And I know that family, if they had gotten her diabetes under management, they had gotten her, the water off of her heart for congestive heart failure, that family lives into their 90s. That family lives a long, long time. I always knew, Tucker, that was my why. And so why am I blabbering on about this? I look for companies that are trying to solve these problems and then bring a skill set I hope they find valuable, that they're willing to pay for, that I can create a good life out of, a good living, so I can help fix the health system. So I look at Insight Optics, scanning for diabetic and hypertensive retinopathy. There are, right now, we have proven in the PD region in South Carolina, 94,000 undiagnosed CKD patients. The expense that incurs on federal and state governments and the strain it has on our hospital systems is unconscionable. And to have a company like Renal Care 360 that's saying we're not gonna just wait for them to come in renal failure. We're going to identify who they are. We're going to help them get them on a program that perhaps can get them out of chronic kidney disease. But if it's no way of doing that, we are going to treat them and make sure that they glide into either dialysis or transplant services. And right now, those folks, they come in through the emergency room in complete renal failure, and it costs an arm and a leg to treat them. Whereas they could have a much better quality of life, been proactively diagnosed. I look at everything that Ochsner Health System's doing, that is doing in Louisiana, and what they're trying to do to take care of the population down there, which is some of the sickest in the United States. Health 2047, which is the venture arm and the incubatory arm and the thought leader arm of the American Medical Association based in Silicon Valley, they're trying to create companies that are solving problems. Right? They're coming in and saying, how do we combat diabetes? Beacon Community Connections, they focus on social determinants of health, right? Those are the non-clinical things that you have surrounding you that cause your health care, right? So if you're homeless, you don't have access to food, you don't have fresh water, you don't have a job, you don't have transportation, right? You're in a really bad situation that you need to be extricated from, be it domestic or similar, right? These folks are the non-clinical case managers using existing community resources to get people connected to those existing community resources and then manage them. And what we've proven is once that happens, it reduces the cost to the health system. And I say royal cost to the health system, I'm talking providers and payers, almost sixfold, right? Hope Health is an FQHC. FQHCs must exist. They are the gap in the ability to deliver primary care. I think Acadian and everything they're trying to do to innovate in and around EMS, but then also bring that acumen into a new modality of care where it's treat in place. So you don't have to go perhaps to a physician's office. You don't have to go to the ER. There can be a call that they roll the ambulance out, and that EMT or paramedic can treat at the top of the license and able to keep that person in the home and not entering into an emergent situation. But of course, if they're there and it is, guess what? You have immediate access to emergency care. And then I think of like Secure Futures. You and I were talking the other day. I think we're texting each other, talking that Britain just experienced its hottest day ever at 104 degrees, and roofs in Britain were spontaneously combusting because they're not designed to take on that heat load. I look at Secure Futures as our ability to develop solar power in K-12, higher ed, government, hospitals, and private business as a way to say, hey, this is how we help with get millions of pounds of carbon out of the atmosphere. This is how we combat and solve for the global climate weirding that is going on. It's not warming, it's definitely weirding. So I mean, Tucker, there has to be a why, right? These days, you can't just jump into the company unless they have a strong why behind them.
So, with all of these companies that you've worked with, whether present or past, can we hope to see any of them on future episodes of the podcast?
Oh, absolutely. I'm going to be reaching out to our clients and the CEOs of those companies, and I'm hoping that they have some time for us to come on the podcast. Absolutely.
Thank you for your time today.
You're welcome, Tucker.
As always, if you're interested in Robinson Ventures or any of the companies that we are working with, or just in general hearing more about us, you can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and visit our website, with all of these links being in the description down below. I'm Tucker Robinson. This is Robinson Ventures Radio.